And good evening, Sword family, and welcome to a sort of birthday edition of the Teahouse. Today we're going to be discussing one of the, a relatively famous Chinese martial artist that almost shares my birthday. Now, before we get started, for those who are not aware, my amazing, wonderful, awesome, great Foxy apparently was so moved by hearing the story of my broken terracotta soldier that I talked about back in July. Can't believe it's actually been that long ago already. But she heard that story and she decided she was going to replace the thing that I once had. And instead of just getting one, I now have an entire set of them. Now, it's not a whole battalion like you would find in the tomb, but I have two foot soldiers. I have two heavy cavalry / spearmen. I have an archer. I have either a second archer or possibly an acrobat. He has no armor. I'm not sure if that's another archer because he doesn't have his arm up here like this guy does. His arm's kind of up by his chest. And then this one really, really blew me away. I have the Emperor himself. This is Emperor Qi Shi Huang. And you can tell that because he's got the sword on his hip. He's got the big hat. He got long flowing sleeves. He's got the kind of cloud motif on the lower part of his robe. That's the Emperor himself. That one was really, really impressive. And this guy right here was already broken when I opened it. It was broken down here, basically at his ankles. But other than the little bit of shininess, when the light hits it just right, you cannot tell this was broken. I put some super glue on him, held him upside down like this until the glue took, and then I just sat him in the other room until he basically cured the rest of the way. And you can't really tell. And I absolutely love the fact that some of them, like this guy, I don't know if you can see it very well, but some of them have a little bit of like brownish, like dirt kind of paint on them to make it look like they've been in the ground. So it's really, really, really impressive that I now have, to replace one, I now have 7 of them. Oh, and I guess that guy right there, the end of his foot's broken off. I don't know when that happened. I don't know if I noticed that last night, but yeah, I don't know. That I don't think that's wood. Come on, focus. It's kind of white on the inside, so it might possibly be resin. I'm not 100% sure on that one. Maybe some of the people who actually work in resin can fill me in on what they think. But yes, I also got this little book about the Terracotta Warriors. It's pretty obviously like geared towards children, telling you a little bit of the story of when they were found and, you know, some of the, that's a crossbowman, kind of telling you about what some of them are. But if we find, I saw a picture in here when I was looking through it yesterday. This one makes me laugh. It's talking about Zhou Jung, but the picture that they have over here, that's Guan Yu. That is Guan Yu, but over here talking about Zhou Jung. Where did I see that? There we go. See that? That is a statue of Qin Shi Huang. And then you look at this guy. You know, this one has the arms behind his back. This one has the arms in front. And this statue doesn't have the cloud motif down here, but it's got the sword over here. Got the big hat. So yeah. My Terracotta Warriors have the Emperor as part of them. And then, of course, Kitty got me a spear treatise, which I'm still going over. It's only about 80 pages, but when I first opened it, I seriously considered taking my my cardstock down there and making up a cover and just printing it out and having a physical copy that I could like have and put in my bookshelf. It is 80 friggin' pages, man. I'm not 80 pages. No. I could maybe do it in sections. So yeah, I had a pretty good birthday, but that is not the topic of the show today. So I just really, really wanted to show those off because that story has and will still always be a sore spot to me. That she just broke something of mine just because I didn't like something of hers. And now to replace the one that was broken, I now have 7. That just, yeah. I posted pictures on Facebook. Most of my sword family has already seen them. But I just wanted to show them off again because why not? So let us run through the comments here. And we will get started. First through the door at the very top of the hour, 5:01, is the woman herself, Foxy. Hello and welcome to the Teahouse. Join us while we discuss Chinese history. Please like, share, and subscribe. Yes, please. And rolling in about 9 minutes later is one of my patrons, Dan Hollifield. Hello, hello, Dan. Hello, Dan. Took a little nap. I almost slept too late to be here. Well, there's always the rerun. And Aunt Donna, greeting Foxy and Dan. Hello, Donna. Be right back. Got to run down the hall. Well, I'm sure you'll make it. And there is the other one, Kitty. Hey, all. Hello, kitten. Greetings for Kitty. And there's another patron, Carl Witzman. Hello, everyone. Hello, Carl. Did you wake up after I left the green room? No. I think we kicked him out. I think Rich did it. And Donna greeting the Witzman dude. Foxy looks away for a moment and poof, you all appear. That's kind of how it happens. Kind of seems to be that way for whatever reason. Sneaky like that. Yeah. And it is kind of chilly and windy outside. So if the internet starts being stupid again, you know why. I'm actually wearing long sleeves for the first time this year. So should have taken a nap too. Can hardly keep my eyes open. May not make it a stupid o'clock. Well, I never make it a stupid o'clock. So took a nap. Still might not make it. Yeah. That's only going to be in like, what, an hour and 15 minutes, I think? Or is it 8 o'clock? I think it's 8 o'clock tonight. Hugs for Foxy. Apologies in advance. There are many screaming children outside. I closed the window. Of course, I closed the window this morning because I was cold. And the other patron, there's Trey. Evening all. Hello, Trey. Greetings for Trey and more greetings for Trey. Dan says, Carl, I've done so much work today I scarcely remember, but I know I was in bed before midnight or thereabout. Well, good to know you were in bed. Don't worry about children being noisy. It's better than not having a fan in the window. The fan might be going back in the other room for the year. I haven't decided yet. It's getting cooler at night. I don't actually need the air, so it might be going back away until next spring. Good, Dan. Been awake since 4 a.m. and got started on more household stuff shortly after. Well, at least you waited till after 7. And greetings for Trey. And hey, everybody from Ruby. Hey, Ruby. Greetings for Ruby, and greetings for Ruby, and greetings for Ruby, and greetings for Ruby. And hey, sword people from our lone viewer over on Twitch from Midnight. Hey, how's it going, Midnight? Happy birthday, Thies. Thank you, Dan. Thank you. Even more than the photo? Yeah. Now, my biggest issue is finding some place to put them. Because finding some place to put one, I could put them, on my desk. This guy right here, this Shinsuke Nakamura. People who are not aware, Japanese wrestler over on WWE, which I no longer watch. He does not have a plate or anything to sit on. So he just has to stand by himself. And I used to have him on top of my record player, right up here. But periodically, for no discernible reason, he would leap off the record player and land on my keyboard. So now he's sitting down here, flat, actually against the desk. So I'm worried about putting these guys on the corners of the desk, up here on the record player. I have a couple of shelves above my TV. I have my my guitar rack right here. Things just seem to fall for no discernible reason in this house. I know that we have a bunch of teenagers living next door that like to slam their doors. And I walk around my apartment. So now I have to find someplace safe to put 6 soldiers and the emperor himself someplace safe. So I'm thinking of trying to find like a small enclosed shelf with like a glass lid that I can put things on where they're not going to leap off at random points throughout the day. But for right now, they're kind of sitting in a kind of small arrow formation, kind of on the corner of my desk. Like the picture I took on Facebook with 4 in the back, then 2, then the emperor up front. For now, that's where they're going to sit till I find something else. And that is almost my last patron. There's Joe. Good evening, folks. Hello, Joe. And greetings for Joe, and greetings for Joe. Those are great. They really are. I'm very, very pleased. Resin would make sense. Wood. But they're obviously not wood because the underside of the broken one is white. So, I don't know. And we skip the Kickbot. Go away, Kickbot. Have some real sweeties there, Foxy and Kitty. Yes, I do. Gonna make me blush? Yeah, well. Lindsay is mentally redecorating the living room now that I have the entertainment center back where it belongs. Left channel of the stereo no longer works, though, so I ordered a new one. Oof. House without music is anathema to me. It is to me, too. And there is Dawn. Evening. Good evening, Dawn. Probably put the new recliners together tomorrow. Nice. Today has been super busy, but so much fun. Good. It's good to hear. Kickbot already been handled. Thank you, Joe. That is awesome. And then we have another one. Greetings for Dawn, and greetings for Dawn. Hope you aren't too worn out. And then we have another Kickbot. Let's just look at the names of our Kickbot here. Steaming Vogue Yeah, no. Okay. Posting a video of the herd. Nice. Banhammer is mighty. Awesome. I love the Banhammer. So, today's topic, and possibly most of the month of October, I haven't decided yet, are going to be famous Chinese martial artists or historical figures. I have something special planned for the week before Halloween. Because Halloween itself will actually be on a Friday. That Saturday will actually be November 1st. And that's the weekend where basically my entire audience will be down in Georgia, I believe, for HalloCon. So I probably will not be doing a show November 1st, just so you know. But the week before Halloween, I have a plan. And it's something that, once again, I'm sure will surprise no one, came from Trey. She gave me an idea a month or so ago for an idea for a Halloween stream that I'm definitely going to be using, but it's going to be the week before Halloween. But the other 3 weeks in October, I'm very seriously considered dedicating just to Chinese martial artists and historical figures. All 3 of these people are martial artists, but they're also historical figures. Even if they might not be as famous outside of the Chinese martial arts sphere, that's kind of why I'm doing this, so that people are aware of them. a bit. Tomorrow's a bit crazy too. I think Monday will be a rest day. Well, you can't rest on Sunday, rest on Monday. Hugs for Dawn, and November 3rd is Dan's birthday. Nice. All right, so our first is someone that was already sort of famous, if for no other reason, because of his most famous student. He was born October 1st of 1893. So just 2 days and almost 100 years before my birthday, Ip Kai-man was born. He is mostly known just as Ip Man. That is not a courtesy name from what I can tell. For whatever reason, he's just known as Ip Man instead of Ip Kai-man. Now, Ip Kai-man is Cantonese. In Mandarin, it is Ye Zhi Wen. Ye Zhi Wen. Ye is obviously the surname. Zhi Wen is the proper name. He became a teacher of Wing Chun at the age of 20. 20 years old, he became a teacher. He had many, many Wing Chun students. The most famous amongst them is Bruce Lee. If Bruce Lee would never have become a student of Ip Man, I personally believe that he probably, number one, he probably would have become a criminal. He had anger issues, and Wing Chun gave him an outlet for those issues. So if he never would have become a student, he would have never become the famous martial artist, and he never would have been able to develop Jeet Kune Do, his own martial art, without the foundation of Wing Chun. Now, Wing Chun, to me, is one of those Chinese martial arts that do not appeal to me. Nothing wrong with it. It's too rigid for the way that I fight. It's very, very stiff. Later on here in a little bit, I'm going to try and see if I can find a video of Ip Man himself doing a Wing Chun form and possibly work on a wooden man. Now, if this video gets, flagged or taken down in other countries for me playing that video, oh well. But Ip Man was the third of 4 children. He grew up in Foshan and received a traditional Chinese education alongside his elder brother, Ip Kai-gak, his eldest sister, Ip Wan-mei, and his younger sister, Ip Wan-hum. All of those obviously are in Cantonese. He is from Canton, which is in the lower part of mainland China. That's, they speak Cantonese in Canton. Could you imagine that? I don't know. And it's just kind of, yeah, why not? So he had one elder brother, one elder sister, and a younger sister, and he was the third of the fourth. He started learning at the age of around 9 or possibly 13 from Chanhua Shun, who was 57 years old at the time. And Ip Man was his last student. Now, Ip only trained with him for 3 years before his Shīfu suffered a stroke in 1909 and his teacher retired. So then Ip became the student of Chanhua Shun's senior student, Ung Chung Suk. And trained with him until he left Foshan to move to Hong Kong at the age of 16, where he attended a secondary school. Six months after moving to Hong Kong, a classmate told him that a friend of the classmate's father had a kung fu expert living with them, and the classmate offered to get Ip Man and that master to spar. Now, at that time, excuse me. At that time, Ip Man was undefeated. Now you have to keep in mind, he's 16 years old. And he's been training for either 8 or 3 years when this duel happened. And he was undefeated. So, he accepts the challenge. He goes to the classmate's house on a Sunday afternoon. And he lost. He lost to Leung Bik. Leung Bik was a very, very famous Wing Chun martial artist. He was 40 years older than Ip Man. Leung Bik was born in 1843. So possibly by the time that Ip Man started learning Wing Chun, Leung Bik was already living in Hong Kong. So Ip Man had heard of Leung Bik, but he'd never seen him, so he had no idea what he looked like. But he kind of got his butt kicked by a very famous martial artist. Now, being 16 and kind of having a big head, he could not believe the speed and the skill of Leung Bik. So he said, let's go again. And he got beat again. And after the second fight, he just got up and left. didn't say anything, was just like, all right, I'm out. After being defeated by one person, keep this in mind. One person kicked his butt twice, and he was so crushed by this defeat that he stopped mentioning entirely that he knew Wing Chun. He was just like, nope, I'm done with this. No more. Felt the same way about college fencing being too rigid. Saber wasn't offered, though. Yeah. Watching, like, Olympic fencing, and they can only move in straight lines, doesn't work for me because, Bagua and Tai Chi think in circles. So having an entirely linear fight, my brain is like, but you could just, circle around behind. But no, you can't. So yeah, rigidity is definitely a thing, even in Chinese martial arts. All right, where was I? Right. So he's no longer even talking about his 8 or 3 years of Wing Chun training. A week later, his classmate comes back and finds him on the campus and tells him that the man was asking about him, that he wanted to talk to him. And he was like, no, I don't want to talk to him. I'm too embarrassed. But his classmate tells him that Leung Bick had praised his kung fu techniques and basically informs him that he is the son of his teacher's teacher, which makes him part of that martial lineage. Leung Bick's father trained Ip Man's teacher, who trained Ip Man, which makes Leung Bick a martial uncle. So Ip Man begins training with Leung Bick until Leung Bick died in 1911. So from what? 1908, 1909 until 1911, another, 3 or 4 years, he trains with Leung Bick. And there's not really a whole lot of information on what he did between 1911 and when he returned to his hometown in 1916 to become a police officer. So you can probably infer that between 1911 and 1916, he was just going to school and probably practicing Wing Chun. But he returned to Foshan at 24 to become a police officer. Now, he taught Wing Chun to relatives, subordinates, friends, but he didn't officially run a school at this time. He was just being a cop. Now, he had several noted students at the time, But Bruce did not become a student of his until Ip went back to Hong Kong. For the most part, while he was in Foshan, he devoted himself entirely to being a cop and basically abandoned martial arts. But two of his students at that time began teaching and spreading Wing Chun in the region. He got married shortly after, still in 1916, to a woman named Cheung Sing, and they had 1, 2, 3, 4. They had 4 kids, 2 sons and 2 daughters, and then he had another son later with another woman. But two of his sons, Ip Chun and Ip Ching, continued his Wing Chun legacy after he died, including one of his sons playing him in a movie. We'll get to that in a little bit. Now, during the Second Sino-Japanese War, Ip Man sided with the Kuomintang, which was a political party that basically wanted to get the Japanese out of China. And Ip agreed that he didn't want the Japanese in China. So, of course, he sided with the Kuomintang. Now, what he did during the war, no one really knows. There are rumors that he joined a intelligence agency in 1938, but no one really knows. And it's kind of believed that Ip Man left Foshan to go live with one of his students in Hong Kong and only came back after the war was over. And then after the war, he went back to being a cop. And in 1949, after the Communist Party won the Civil War, Ip was part of the Kuomintang, which was against the Chinese Communist Party. So he left with his wife and his eldest daughter and went back to Hong Kong. Now, it was in Hong Kong in the 1950s that he really started his kung fu school. When they arrived in Hong Kong, his wife and daughter went back to Foshan because they left some paperwork behind. Now, unfortunately, while they were back there, the border between China and Hong Kong was closed. So Ip Man never saw his wife again because in 1960, she died of, I want to say it was cervical cancer. So basically from 1950 until basically for like 9 years, he never saw his wife or his daughter. And his wife, unfortunately, died before they could see each other again. So if you've ever seen the Donnie Yen Ip Man movies where Ip Man is with his wife training for a fight and she dies shortly after the fight, that didn't happen. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. But after he moved to Hong Kong, he was in his mid-50s, so it was hard for him to find a job. You know, he'd basically only been a cop and a fighter. But the Hong Kong police force, either they didn't want him or he didn't want to be a cop again, so that didn't work. Friends of his were able to get him a job in a restaurant, but, you know, working in a restaurant is not exactly high-profile work. But while he was working there, he made friends via the Workers' Association, and the association had a club for martial artists. But Ip Man did not want others to know that he was a martial artist, because he had gotten addicted to opium. And he didn't want people to know that he had gotten addicted to opium. He was buying it on the black market. So he had to earn enough money to buy his opium while still sending money home to Foshan to his family. But eventually, in the early 1950s, he started to teach so that he could afford his opium and to take care of his family. Most of his earliest students were members of the Restaurant Workers Association, and they were angry young men. And they were attracted to his charisma. And Hong Kong was very, very dangerous at the time, so they wanted to be able to protect themselves. At first, the teaching business was bad, because students would hang around for a month or two, and then they'd leave thinking that they'd learned enough to be able to protect themselves on the street, so bye. They left. He had to move his school 2 separate times because he was unable to afford rent. But eventually, he was able to get students that were high profile enough that he was able to start making money. One student was a grandmaster named Chao Tse-chung, who was themselves a teacher. So once his fame grew enough that he was able to start getting some of these better students, that was when he was able to kind of solidify himself as a teacher. Now, no one is perfect, obviously. And around 1955, he had a mistress from Shanghai. People don't really know her name. They just refer to her as Shanghai Po. And she got pregnant and gave him another son. And Ip never formally introduced his mistress to his other sons when they arrived in Hong Kong to reunite with him in 1962. It wasn't until the 1960s that Ip Man became more famous in Hong Kong, and this allowed him to attract the wealthier, better students. It was in the late 1960s, 1967 or 1968. Ip Man and some of his students established the Wing Chun Athletic Association. And the main purpose was to help Ip Man with his financial difficulties. One of his former students claimed that Ip was using the tuition money from the Wing Chun Athletic Association to support his opium addiction. And it was in, I believe, hold on, the late 1950s that Ip Man was introduced to Bruce Lee, and Bruce Lee became a student of Ip Man. Ip Man died on December 2nd of 1972 from laryngeal cancer. 7 months later, Bruce Lee died. So he was 79 years old when he died, which is not a bad run, honestly. But again, if you've seen the Ip Man movies, Ip Man was quite a bit older than he was portrayed by Donnie Yen in those films. He would have been in his 60s, at least. Let me see. Get my calculator out here. Yeah, he would have been in his mid-60s when he started training Bruce Lee. Whereas Donnie Yen portrays him as quite a bit younger. Seen those movies, I enjoyed them, but felt they were not accurate. They were accurate to a point. But yeah, exactly. That's why most of those movies are based on. Yeah, exactly. 79 is a really good run, especially for someone who spent more than half their life smoking opium. Yeah, at least 20 years younger. Exactly. But if you look at some of the other portrayals of Ip Man, he is portrayed as older. If you watch the movie Dragon, the Bruce Lee story, which is based on a book written by Bruce's wife, he was portrayed as older in that. Then you have the Ip Man movies with Donnie Yen. You have The Legend is Born, which portrayed him also as younger, but in The Legend is Born Ip Man from 2010, Ip Man's son, Ip Chun, played Leung Bik. And Ip Chun and Ip Ching have been the martial arts coordinators for the Ip Man movies, starring Donnie Yen, and for The Legend is Born Ip Man. So you know the Wing Chun in those movies is accurate to what Ip Man himself would have taught. Because his sons were the martial arts coordinators for those movies. The Grand Master, starring Tony Leung. Again, Ip Man was younger. There was a 2013 television series based on his life, portrayed as younger. Ip Man: The Final Fight from 2013 portrayed him as younger. Most of the time, when you see Ip Man portrayed in a film, they're going to portray him as 40s or 50s, possibly, instead of the 60s or 70s that he actually was. But there have been many, many movies based on the life of Ip Man. And a lot of them will take bits and pieces of actual things that happened, and they will kind of aggrandize and... I mean, they're making a movie. They want you to root for the hero, right? Now, like I said earlier, I was never a fan of Wing Chun, but I own, I think, 3 of the 4 Donnie Yen Ip Man movies, as well as The Grandmaster, as well as Legend is Born. I can appreciate martial arts that I don't practice. I can appreciate the style if I don't appreciate the execution of the style. We'll put it that way. Now, a lot of that is because of Ip Man. After my mentor Shīfu died, picked up, I don't think it's in here, which it should be. I picked up Bruce Lee's Tao Jeet Kune Do. Started learning Jeet Kune Do. Now, Jeet Kune Do, in and of itself, is not exactly a martial arts style. It is more a martial philosophy. Yes, there are aspects of it, like telling you how to punch, how to kick, how to block, but it's more of a philosophy. So I consider myself to be a student of Ip Man through Bruce Lee. And watching those movies and learning more about him gave me better appreciation of him as a human being and as a martial artist. So I consider him to be kind of a martial grandfather kind of character, kind of figure. You know, my teacher's 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 teacher. Now, several years ago, when I was assistant teaching at our local community college, my Shīfu at the time was also teaching Wing Chun. He didn't call it that. He didn't say that he was teaching Wing Chun. Oh, recall the name for the teacher's teacher? Yeah. Go back and rewatch that episode if you want to know what that's called. But I've mentioned several times about my Shīfu and how over the course of one college semester, which is usually around 3.5 months, in the Tai Chi class, he taught the Yang Simplified 24 for the entire semester. One style, one form, the whole time. But if you go to the Kung Fu class, he would teach you multiple forms over the same time period. And he would always start with Mantis Fist, for the first time students. Now, if someone came back for a second semester, they would learn another Mantis form, usually the Little Tiger Swallow, which I think is the superior form, if you ask me, but no one does. But that form never took the entire semester. So the second half of the semester, he would teach you something else. And it was always the student's choice. He would either teach you a staff form. If you didn't want to learn a staff form, he would teach something else. Well, I had been sick for a couple of weeks. And I had not been able to make the Wednesday night classes. When I came back, you had half of the class over here in the regular ballroom learning the staff form, and then up on the stage, you had 3 or 4 women practicing a completely different form. Now, small sidetrack. Wing Chun supposedly was originally developed by a Buddhist nun for women. It was a martial arts designed for women. So the fact that a lot of the most famous martial artists now are men completely blows my mind. When I learned that this was developed by a nun and it was originally supposed to be for women, I was like, well, damn, what the hell happened there? So the fact that I saw 3 women up on stage, I recognized what they were doing. They were doing Wing Chun. But Shīfu told them it was aerobic exercises. He called them aerobic exercises. He wasn't telling them that he was teaching them a Wing Chun form, but he was. And I recognized it right away. I knew exactly what he was teaching them. But he kind of pulled me aside when I walked in the room, and I looked up on the stage, and he could see that I recognized what they were doing. So he pulled me aside. He's like, don't say anything. Don't tell them. They think that it's aerobic exercise because they didn't want to learn the staff. So I told them it's aerobic exercises. Don't say anything. Yeah, back when women were tougher, I wouldn't say that around your wife, bro. Now, let me see if I can find... Because I know I've seen it on YouTube. I just want to make sure that... Yep. Now, hopefully I won't get dinged for this. Yeah. So cute. Yeah, see, now you're in trouble. Well, let's... This is actual footage of Ip Man himself in 1972, which is also the year he died. Got to remember that. Filmed by, I think it's one of his sons. And we're not going to watch all 8 minutes of this, obviously, but I just want to show you what this man was capable of. This is Siu Lim Tao. This is one of the forms that my Shīfu was teaching. Now watch this, and you can understand why I say this is far too rigid for the way that I fight. You do something with one hand, then you repeat it with the other hand. And you got to realize this man is 79 years old at this time. So for 79, him still being able to do this is pretty impressive, you got to admit. This is literally the Siu Lim Tao. This is literally the form that those girls were learning. You know, he's going to do the exact same thing with his right hand that he just did with his left. Now he's doing both hands. Back to one hand. Chain punches that Wing Chun is famous for. And there you go. That's the Siu Lim Tao. Yeah, I wouldn't want to fight a medieval Chinese nun. You're right. Not in trouble, he amuses me. All right, yeah. It is hypnotic, but it's also it's far too rigid and just that was the Siu Lim Tao. Now, if we can find somewhere on here is him using the wood. There it is, the Mukyanjong is the wooden man. So now you're going to see him doing a form on the wooden man. Now I don't know if I've told this, but I used to own a wooden man. It was basically my Christmas tree for several years when I couldn't afford a tree. I just put lights on it and put Christmas presents under the wooden man. There's no sound because, again, it was recorded with a camera in the 1970s. For the people that were around then, I heard that cameras back then, they didn't have microphones in them. So you had to record the camera and then go back in and redub the sound later. This was friggin' 8 years before I was born, so I can't really tell you if that's true. But just like unarmed and just like weapon styles, the wooden man has forms. And that's kind of what he's showing here. He's showing one of the Mukyanjong forms. Had a silent camera in the 70s. Well, there you go. So, that is the life of Ip Man. A martial artist, a police officer, possibly a spy during the Second Sino-Japanese War, but most well known as the teacher of Bruce Lee and the person that is, in a roundabout way, responsible for bringing Wing Chun to the United States. Had to ride horses to the picture hut to get it developed. And someone that I consider a teacher grandfather to me. And that is why I wanted to discuss him here tonight. We almost share a birthday. We share a birth month. And he is my martial grandfather. Lived a heck of a life. You're not kidding. You're not kidding. And it is cool to feel a connection. I feel that connection to a lot of people throughout, my different martial art experiences. Martial grandfathers, martial uncles, martial brothers, martial sisters. It's when you look at martial arts as a whole, like a family, you never really have to fight one another to validate the other person. Again, I know, brought this up many, many times, but the reason that this is called the Teahouse because of one scene in the movie Fearless where you have Jet Li's character, Ho Yun Jia, meeting with someone that he's going to be fighting the next day and basically explaining that martial arts are like tea. Tea does not grade itself. We grade tea. We are the ones saying this tea is better, this tea is better, this one tastes better, this one has a better floral scent to it. The tea itself is just tea. And it's the same thing with martial arts. I don't feel necessary that I have to go out and fight every single person that does a different style than me to validate that they are that style, that they use that style, that they are that martial art. I don't care. I use my style, you use your style. We can discuss the differences between these styles. And we can even discuss physically through sparring, but it's not necessary. We can just be. There's my co-host. We can just study our styles and we can discuss the differences and just be ourselves without needing to validate someone else's thoughts and opinions on their style. Hi, bud. Yes. And Inigo agrees. Yes, he does. Boop. Donna, what did April learn? I've seen photos of her in a martial robe. Well, depending on what it looks like, I could. There's co-star. Yes, there's co-star. Trying to nom on me during my show. I do not want to be nommed on. No, I do not. Stop. I need my hand. You cannot have it. Don't need to go on a rant right now about gatekeeping and people thinking that they need to validate other people's opinions. Whatever it is that they teach there on Walnut Street. I don't know. Certain people out there feel like they need to validate everyone else's opinions just because they differ from their opinions. Taekwondo. Okay. That is Korean. Yes. Korean martial art, Taekwondo. TAE. Too much opinion fighting. You're not kidding. Taekwondo. Yes. That's it. Had a brain fart. Could only think of Tai Chi. Understandable. Now, we are over the hour. And I do need to get food because food is life. Food is good. We like having food. But I will be back on Monday for another game stream. I will be back next Saturday on the 11th for another famous Chinese martial artist. Good show, laters. Thank you. I haven't exactly decided which martial artist I will be discussing next week, but I'll figure it out before Wednesday, hopefully. Good night. Good night, Dan. You could actually get a PhD in Taekwondo in Korea. Good night, Donna. Awesome show, brother. Thank you, Midnight. Thank you for the information tonight. You are very welcome. Now, we're going to remember to do this time. There we go. Night all. Awesome show. Thank you. I will see you Monday. If I don't see you Monday, I will see you Wednesday. If I don't see you Wednesday, I will see you right back here in 1 week for another edition of the Teahouse. 再见。